Okay, so these are Titus Thrust plates. We just made a couple batches of different ones, and I've got 3 different kinds here. This one, first off, goes to our Titus blocks, and this we use exclusively on our Titus block. This is a standard Cleveland plate that we make. Now these are made out of billet steel rather than being a cast. Original thrust plates from Ford are cast. And sometimes they are the aftermarket ones are exceptionally hard, and they're very hard to try to countersink, like if you're running a bearing. This one is out of a 351 Windsor. And then the other plate that I have here is one that we make for a 351 Windsor. So this is a billet steel one, and we make this one in 2 different configurations. This is flat on one side. This side actually has a groove machined into the back end of it. Now we also make this plate without the groove, but the reason this one has a groove is if you machine a Windsor block for 55mm roller cam bearings, the front roller bearing is wider than a standard cam bearing, and if you press it all the way into the block to where it's flush with the front of the block to where the thrust plate would go to, most times it hangs out into the distributor hole and you can't get the distributor in the block. And you can't grind the back of the edge of the bearing because otherwise the needles will fall out and you ruin the bearing. So you have to leave the front bearing sticking out of the front of the block about 60 thousandths. Well, we machine this plate with an 80 thousandths receiver groove in it so that that bearing has a place to stick out of the front of the block, yet it still has this area where the front of the cam still sits flush to the front of the block. So that solves a problem with the Windsor blocks with 351, or excuse me, with roller cam bearings. This one, as I say, goes to a standard Ford Cleveland block, and this one's made out of our billet steel, and this one is our Titus. The difference between the two is we've relocated the holes in our Titus block for the mounting holes. Our Titus block uses a thicker thrust plate, so instead of the standard 187 thick, this uses a 250 thou thick. And we've also, when we made the bolt holes, positioned the bolt holes, we widened the bolt holes in the Titus block to spread them further apart, because especially in a 351 Windsor, where the holes are very narrow, when you bore these blocks for a 55mm roller cam bearing, you almost intersect the bolt holes. So we actually even spread these apart so that when we put huge bore camshafts in a Titus block, we have plenty of meat still to bolt to the thread to, or to bolt the plate to the block, so we're not interfering with the bearing surface to the bolt. So those are just 3 reasons why we make thrust plates in the first place and go through all the trouble to make them, because number 1, we need them for our block, and number 2, it solves problems for other blocks.